Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Fit, Strong, Free podcast, standing for fit in body, strong in mind, and free in soul. And if you didn't know previously what Fit, Strong, Free was about, then those are my 3 pillars. Just like many things to do with health and wellness, but I truly believe, if we're fit in body, we're strong in mind, and we're free in our souls, then ultimately we're happy, and we've made it in quotation marks to a healthy life full of zest, full of vitality, and just full of happiness. So my goal is to spread the fit, strong freedom to many, many people and try and help as many people as I can along the way. So without further ado, let's get into this podcast. So this podcast is the second chapter of my mindset guide that I've created. It's called Let's Be Real. And let's just get straight into it. So let's be real. Right now, you are perfect in this moment. You have created your life to this point, is now reached, and this is a beautiful thing. Though you may not see it this way and may not believe the perfection in this moment, every step of your journey this far, you have had control over and have created the version of yourself that you are today. No matter how you see yourself, what you look like, what kind of job you have or relationship you're in, you are perfect in this very moment. And I can understand how, saying something like this might be quite hard to digest, because a lot of people feel like they've been given they've been dealt their cards in life and things can't be changed and they haven't had control over certain things. But really, you have had control over many of those aspects of life. Sure, things happen and they are out of your control. However, the way you react to things are well in your control, and how things go from there are in your control. So things, in this moment are perfect. And as we established in my previous podcast to do with why we struggle, we have formed ourselves through our states, minds, and the choices we have made, as I have just mentioned, through our state of mind. However, many of us are simply not happy with where we are at in many areas of our lives right now. And this, I find, is to do with excuses, and excuses cause us to limit ourselves in achieving our goals. Let me just repeat that again. Excuses cause us to limit ourselves in achieving our goals. According to Sigmund Freud, excuses stem from a deeper unconscious desire to protect ourselves, our ego, against anxiety and shame. The more we feel these emotions of anxiety and shame, the more likely we are to build barriers, which are excuses that hinder our chances of attaining a goal. So because we have anxiety and shame from not wanting to do something, we cover that up with our excuses in order to make ourselves feel better and protect our ego, essentially. I find this very interesting. But why would we want to hurt our own performance and motivation? We make excuses for our excuses. For instance, it was too cold to go to the gym, I feel too tired, eating healthily is too expensive. So these are the kind of excuses we can make for ourselves, and this is our subconscious trying to protect our sense of self from being criticised or attacked. If you don't want to go to the gym, deep down, you're lazy and you just can't be bothered. However, it's cold, so that's a perfect excuse not to go, and that stops and protects us from being criticised or attacked. This self-protective mechanism works by helping us feel less burdened and anxious, but does not go a long way in serving us. Cue the chocolate bar later on that night after you've decided not to go to the gym, and then you don't feel that great afterwards. But hey, I can understand how this definitely lessens the burden on us, once we have come up with an excuse, we just think, okay, it's done now. Let's move on. So, with all these excuses, it may sound like something you don't want to hear, but it is time to give up the excuses if you truly want to start attaining these goals that you have had for a long time and you just have really struggled to stick to. So it's all good knowing, for instance, what to eat and having the best workout program suited for you specifically, but if we don't actually execute the program, if we don't stick to it, and if we don't keep to it consistently, then the excuses can creep in, and they do creep in, and we will stop and we will just not attain that goal, and it will come back round into a vicious circle, and we'll just keep trying and making excuses. So we need to ask ourselves how we got to this very point in the first place, and we need to pay attention to our mental barriers and our self-limiting beliefs as they are goal hindering. I truly believe that if you have an unhealthy body, there is a psychological reason behind it, and we need to figure it out. I know this, again, might be quite hard to believe for some, but some people that might not have a healthy body at the moment, you might find it hard to believe, as I said, that, this is down to a psychological reason. However, I have experienced this myself, like prior, during my 20s, I did not have the healthiest of bodies. And even though I would go to the gym now and then, I still wasn't healthy. I didn't feel good at all. I had low self-esteem, wasn't very confident, and just didn't think much of myself. And it's quite sad, really, to think that all those years get wasted, during your younger years, especially once you haven't quite established your true sense of self. So I find it really sad that people do waste these years. And as I said, it is a psychological reason behind it. And the good thing is we are able to change this psychological factor in our way of thinking. So we can definitely get out of this, and it's just a matter of determination and actually really wanting to make a change and realising our self-limiting beliefs and our excuses, which really, really don't help us. So, moving on. No matter what your level of happiness, there is always a reason behind being out of shape, as it is not only from a case of eating unhealthy foods, but the reason that drove us to eat them. So going back to what I said about, low self-esteem and all of that, it does unfortunately work in a circle of just depression, if you want a harsh word there. You don't feel good, you start to comfort eat, you eat more and more, and you get bigger and bigger. And that essentially makes you feel worse and worse, and it's like never ending until it gets to a point where you're like, okay, let's do something about it. You start, and don't get me wrong, many people do continue and they go on to live wonderful, healthy lives, but many of us aren't able to do that for some reason. So that's what I'm interested in helping you with. So, as I said, there's always a reason that has driven us to eat more or to think in certain ways that create these excuses. However, the latest research on memory is 50% of what you talk about in the past isn't even the truth. That is 50% of what you talk about on a day-to-day basis in the past isn't the truth. And this blew my mind when I heard it. Do we forget what happened? Do we just make things up in our head according to the past? Because I don't think we all do that. I think, what we talk about that happened in the past, we really believe it happened. You don't have the same brain as you did then, so you make stuff up. This is what it goes on to say. So we make stuff up, which means that now you're reliving the past that you didn't even have. You embellish it to produce the emotions to reaffirm your limited state. And again, my mind was blown when I discovered this, and I can see how true it is in our everyday lives. So I'm just going to repeat that one last time. Sorry if this is getting boring, but so the latest research on memory is that 50% of what you talk about is in the past and isn't even the truth, because you don't have the same brain as you did then. So you make stuff up, which means now you are reliving the past that you didn't even have. So if you want an example, let's just say I'm scared deep down of losing weight. Let's just stick with health and weight loss. And I constantly, talk to people about, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried this diet, it didn't work. I tried this diet, it didn't work. I'm telling myself that diets don't work for me, and I am making myself believe that, which in essence is creating a self-limiting belief that I will never lose the weight and that there is absolutely no hope. And having no hope will just never do anything for your motivation or your why, in order to get to that next level and start to create these goals. So that's one example. Living in the past, it's not real anymore, because what's real is now and in this very moment. So this does make sense to me. I'm sorry if it's a little bit fluffy. I just think it's really, it's evidence and it's scientific, and that's what I like about it. And the guy that wrote this is called Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've spoken about him before, and I think his work is incredible. It's all to do with neuroscience and how we can raise our frequencies in each energy center of our body, which are known also as our chakras. So it does go quite deep. I've done a lot of reading and research into this, and all I can say is it works for sure, if you really believe it. Anyway, I won't go into all of that right now, but what I want to do is help you to overcome your excuses and free yourself from your excuses. So this is my little exercise for you guys to do if you are wanting to eliminate your self-limiting beliefs and just free yourself from your excuses, as I said. So the first thing to do is to write down the thoughts and excuses that you keep telling yourself, and the things that you need to stop thinking. So writing these thoughts down weakens them. So write these down, and the moment you can observe these thoughts, you are no longer the program that is in your head. You are no longer that 50% BS, basically, that you're chatting about in your head. You are observing the program, and you literally objectify your subjective self. So it's not really you just say, right, like imagine it's somebody else almost that you're writing these excuses for. It's kind of laughable in a way, because you just think, well, why didn't that person just get on with it and do it? So when you write these down, it really does weaken them, and I've done this myself, and it does work. You just have to be consistent with it and always keep them at the top of your mind, that they are perhaps your weak points and they do really limit you. So just always keep that in mind and try and overcome them. So after you've done that, I want you to write down those emotions that keep you anchored to the past. Those emotions are literally residue from the past chemically. The moment you start to feel suffering, guilt, unworthiness, despair, or any kinds of self-sabotaging emotions, you're back in the past and you cannot see the future. You're thinking within those low emotional states, which make your brain worse. So try to become aware of this and understand that these thoughts are a record of your past and don't belong in your future. So these are words and emotions that really you just want to detach from your future. You want to see them as a record of your past, and you want to keep them there, keep them in your past. So, as I mentioned before, these are low frequency emotions such as suffering, guilt, unworthiness, despair, self-sabotaging, anything that just doesn't do you good. So, write all of these down and just be completely aware of how you're making yourself feel through the way you think. It's just not, it's not coherent, and it's not serving you in your life. So, I hope this has helped you guys. I'm going to leave it there really, but just to reiterate, like the exercise at the end is just to free yourself from these excuses. We don't want them anymore, and we just want to clear the path in order to succeed. So I really hope you found this helpful, and thank you for listening. If you do need any more help, then please get in touch. I've got a whole mindset guide that I'm going through at the moment. So this is only chapter 2 of 12. And if you do the exercises at the end of each podcast, then you'll definitely be well on your way to, creating the life that you want and just pushing yourself to become a healthier version and a happier version of yourself. And that in turn, I really do believe does emanate throughout your relationships as well with friends and family, and allow you to help others. All right, guys, thanks again for listening, and I hope to see you at the next podcast.